Good morning, everybody. Delighted to get to spend some more time with you. Really pleased to see you here. Please do say hi in the chat. Please do let us know where you're dialing in from. I'm Andrew Jacobs. I'm chairing the this next session. I hope you were here for the first one. If you weren't, Don Taylor and Egla Vinaskaita, awesome session looking at AI. Please do go back and have a look at the recording. The recordings will be available later on today. But that was then. We were looking at AI then. We're now looking at AI now. And really interesting to say, well, how is the workplace changing? The workplace is evolving. We recognize the workplace is very different to what it was 5 years ago, 3 years ago, a year ago. If things are moving on. And the challenge is now, I think, for learning and development, it isn't about delivering more content. It's much more about creating connection and that experience. I'm delighted to be able to welcome Helen Marshall and Will Towse from Thrive to be able to go through this with us today. How are you guys doing? You good?
Yeah, all good. Good to be here. Thank you.
Doing very
Excellent.
well, thank you.
Delighted to have you here. As I was saying to the guys in the chat beforehand, I always like hosting Thrive because they know what they're doing. You know, when it comes to doing slides and things like that, it's like they know what they're doing, and I know we're in safe hands. So, without further ado, I will hand over to you two. Everybody else, please keep it going in the chat. Please do make sure you ask your questions as well, because we will pick those questions up at the end. So, over to you two. Thanks very much, guys.
Amazing. Thanks, Andrew. And watchers now have loads of technical difficulties with our slides because you've complimented our capabilities. Thanks, Andrew. Also, for everyone that has joined, you are in extra safe hands with Andrew here as well, one of the best facilitators in our industry. So as he said, drop in the chat where you're from, where you're joining from, and potentially what you're looking forward to in this session today as well. I think we're really focused on how a connected employee experience wins in the AI era. So if we can get the slides on screen, that would be awesome. Excellent, good stuff. So focused really on how we can ease workforce tensions that might exist, particularly in the face of new technologies that are coming into play, and how, as Andrew's just said, the workplace has really changed quite rapidly over particularly the last 5 years. So I'm Helen Marshall. I'm Chief Learning Officer at Thrive. I've been with Thrive for just over 4 years now, started off in the role of Head of Learning, and now, as I said, in the position of CLO, where I often talk about all of the amazing stuff we're doing at Thrive out into the wider industry, but I'm also responsible for internal talent and development as well. And I'm joined by the wonderful Will, who I'll let introduce himself as well.
Thank you, Helen. So yeah, lovely to meet you all. As you can see on the screen, my name is Will Towse. I'm the Director of Sales here at Thrive. I'm actually lucky enough to have been with the company pretty much since we launched, which was 7 years ago. So I've got the opportunity of introducing new prospects to Thrive and introducing them to the capabilities of our learning platform and bringing them on board as customers. But yeah, looking forward to presenting today.
Awesome, good stuff. Thanks, Will. So I suppose to start us off, thinking about our expectations versus our realities. Now, I'd be really keen, as I'm talking you through this slide, for you to share in the chat about what this means to you, whether you've experienced any of what I'm going to share with you, and also if you can pinpoint anything that jumps out at you in relation to how you experience things outside of the workplace versus how you experience things within it. So every year at Thrive, we host an event called Thrive Live. We've got it coming up in December, which is an event for our customers to all get together in one place to talk through current workplace challenges and opportunities alongside how they're utilizing Thrive. For that event, we bring in amazing external speakers to add some different perspectives into the conversations that we're having. One of those speakers at our event last year was, or the year before that, sorry, 2 years ago, was a man called Henry Coutinho Mason, who calls himself a reluctant futurist. And one of the things he spoke about was how we experience the world outside of the workplace in what is often quite a streamlined and connected way. So if we're thinking about apps like Uber, or Deliveroo, things like that, where you can get, and even Amazon Prime, where you can get things instantly. You can get in a taxi and take you somewhere without even really necessarily having to have a conversation with someone. Not always the best way, but it's very streamlined and you have access to a lot of things. And then actually, when you come into a workplace, technology is often quite disconnected. You might need multiple different passwords. Things might not work together in the way that you expect them to. And so what you're experiencing there is your expectation of how things are functioning and how things should be functioning on the one hand versus actually what the reality is on the other when you come into the workplace. And actually that creates a tension point from that very first moment you set foot through the door in an organization of something that's maybe slightly disappointing or it isn't meeting your expectations. So I think from an L&D perspective, we should really be thinking about how we can bridge that gap between where people are and where our organizations are, and how we can bring those two things slightly closer together. Now, obviously, there are a lot of things at play in the makeup of an organization and people's experience within it, but L&D obviously play a part in facilitating that. One other thing that is worth thinking about is how many generations are also currently within the workplace. So at the moment, we've got 4 main generations in today's workforce. I think there's arguably 2 others that fall into this. So if you were really thinking about people who have stayed in the workforce for even longer than, I suppose, retirement age, we might have a slightly older generation, and we might also be starting to see Gen Alpha starting to take up, I suppose, part-time work as well. But really, we're focused on these 4 main generations. So we have people with huge amounts of knowledge and experience in the baby boomer era right through to Gen Z. And there's also going to be 600 million new entrants into our workforce within the next 10 years. So we're having to adapt and change to new perspectives, new ideas, new experiences coming in, and looking at how we transfer all of that amazing knowledge and skills and experience that exist already within our workplaces, and how we meet in the middle at some point as well. What's interesting here, I think, is that we have a generation who were probably born around the 1960s to a generation that are that were born around the 2010s. And if we think about the internet as an example of massive technological disruption, that happened in the 1990s. So those baby boomers and Gen X have seen a huge amount of change, and millennials as well, have seen a huge amount of change during their time um, within their workforce or within education as well. And Gen Z are the ones who have experienced that technological shift firsthand. And what we'll start to experience is not only people who are digital natives coming into the workforce, but people who are AI natives as well. I know that I've had conversations with my 5 and 7-year-olds about AI, and I know obviously, Will, you posted on LinkedIn yesterday about an image that you created for your little one over the weekend using ChatGPT. So it's becoming something that we are experiencing, and our children are going to be used to. So what does that mean, and how, when we're thinking about that tension that I just spoke about, what those expectations are for how you experience things outside the workspace to actually what's going on within it. So when we're thinking about we're creating a more connected and unified experience for people, what does that really mean? So we're here today to talk about people experience more broadly, and then we'll get a little bit more specific around how Thrive are approaching some of these challenges as we go throughout the session. If we think about it on a fundamental level, we probably all know what it means to make a great employee experience. We all have ideas about what this means for us, our understanding of how previous organizations, maybe that we've even worked for, approach this, and how we might be contributing and approaching this now within our roles. So just to pick a few of the things out on screen there, if we're thinking about how we have certain tools, processes, and systems that actually create the experience overall within an organization, but then things like how development in people and a culture that supports learning creates that good employee experience for people. There might be good career pathways, there might be regular coaching, there might be supportive teams and leadership development, management development, things like that that fit within the whole employee experience and life cycle as well. But actually, the reality is probably a little bit harder. So if we're thinking about, and hopefully you can see this on your screens, if we're thinking about what that reality looks like in general, it's probably a little bit harder um, to actually have a really effective employee experience within an organization. So we might all think we know what's involved, but as we know, when it gets down to the practical elements of delivering against this, it can be a lot trickier. Now, there's a report from Mercer, which I think Andrea is going to link to you in the chat, that talks around. So they released a bit of a survey around employee experiences, and some of the things that are listed here probably not going to be a huge surprise to people, but really put into context how particularly limited resources are making it a bit of a barrier to roll out an effective people experience within an organization. But if we go to the next slide, there are three stats really that I wanted to highlight. So 20% of the respondents to Mercer's survey call out suboptimal HR tech as a real issue to actually delivering against an effective and good employee experience. That's the same with ineffective internal operations. So how things are actually working within the organization once you get there, pointing again to those tension points that I mentioned a few moments ago. And then one really big one is unengaging internal communications. Now, practically everyone that we speak to, from the customers that we work with to our wider connections within the industry, always raise communication as a challenge within their businesses. And we've definitely seen some organizations really make vast improvements in how they communicate with their workforce. And actually, a lot of that is falling into L&D teams' remit now. So we're actually seeing a lot of comms and L&D roles appearing, which is really interesting. But if we're thinking about those three things, technology, effective operations, and effective communications, then those challenges I think are worth highlighting when we're thinking about how we can create a more streamlined and better employee experience. So to put that into context a little bit in relation to our own customer base, so obviously we work with about 450 global customers. And I'm going to read you through this graph because I'm conscious you're probably not going to be able to read that. It's quite small for you. What we did was look at the state of play for L&D right now. So we are all very aware that people have limited headcounts and reduced budgets at the moment. We're seeing that practically everywhere. So what does that mean on a practical level? So we took a look at how many employees our customers have on average, and then how many average number of L&D teams, L&D team representatives they have on their team. So if you can see on the right hand side, if you're around the 500 to, let's say, the 5,000 mark, you've got around 3 to 5 people on average within your teams. But then the 5,000 to 10,000 employee mark, so much kind of small to medium, getting into larger enterprise customers, the rate at which headcount goes up is not drastically different. So we're only seeing a rise in one member of your team between the potentially 1,000 and 10,000 people. So we're looking at actually how do those same number of people deliver to many more employees, and therefore how do you make things more scalable within those organizations? Yes, there is a jump to nearly 10 members on average when you get to over the 10,000 mark. But again, the capabilities that exist within that team is still going to be limited based on how many employees and what that looks like. So just thought it was worth calling out. Maybe you can reflect on the realities that exist within your workplace at the moment, how many members of your team you have to support the number of employees you have, And whether you've got the balance right there, or whether, I mean, maybe the answer to the question whether you could do with any more resources is always going to be yes, please. But I think it's always worth putting into context actually what's going on across the industry when we talk about that headcount and we talk about the average number of employees our teams are serving. Within those customers, what we're seeing a lot of is often siloed information, it's multiple versions of the same content, and it's dispersed workforces and the challenges that come along with that. So if you're experiencing that right now, then I suppose know that you're not alone, that those are challenges that we're all having to face and to deal with as well. So how about we just make it easier to get work done? Wouldn't that be lovely? And if you go to the next slide, Will, I think we're thinking really particularly around three core areas here. So we're talking about access at the point of need. We're talking about how you effectively manage the knowledge that exists within your workplace, and learning and how to develop yourself alongside that falls into that category as well. And then the third thing that we are really focused on in Thrive at the moment, and always have been, is human connection, whether that's from our business perspective and the way that we operate and support our customers, or whether that's the way that we can encourage our customers to maintain that level of human connection in whatever it is that they're delivering. Obviously, we've seen a huge push, and many of you will have experienced this, back towards face-to-face recently, but also blended learning, how you utilize digital tools alongside those face-to-face and in-person elements as well. So underpinning all of that, I think human connection really is something that we'll see spoken about a lot more over the coming weeks and months. Now, there are three key words I think that we'd use to hone in on what good looks like here, and that's frictionless, actionable, and human. And we're going to dig into what each of those mean in a little bit more detail, and Will's going to bring some of that to life from a Thrive perspective. So if we think about frictionless, I think one of the things that we need to be thinking about as L&D is, again, how can we bridge that gap between where people are and where our organizations are? So coming back to that point I made at the beginning around those tension points, how do we remove those tension points? What does that look like? And Will, I'll hand over to you to talk about how we're approaching that at Thrive.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Helen. So, yeah, I mean, since Thrive was founded, we believe that social and bite-sized learning should be integrated into your day-to-day routines, and we saw that as being critical. And we feel that now is the same for the whole sort of employee experience. So Helen gave a really good example earlier how within our personal lives we have easy access to all of the information that we need. A perfect example is the iPhone. We've got probably 1,000,001 different apps on our iPhone to access anything that we need at the point of need, but the iPhone itself is that central tool that enables us to access all of those tools easily. So in sort of Thrive, we sort of see an opportunity to integrate learning and the employee experience back into one single sort of hub or just experience. So sort of seeing your company updates and communications, your overdue compliance, or maybe even sort of like podcasts that are being delivered, any content that you want your end users and learners to be able to see and have access to will be through the unified experience of Thrive. So what we've done, and through a recent acquisition that we made of a company called Hula, we've completely redesigned our homepage experience, and not just sort of giving it a better user experience and look and feel, but we're actually deeply integrating other pieces of technology that your learners are using on a day-to-day basis. So ultimately, where we want Thrive to be is the first thing or the first piece of technology that your employees open as soon as they start their working day, because ultimately it's got access to everything that they need, and it's the last thing that they close at the end of the day because they're of course done with the working day. So from the image that you can see on the screen here, you can see that yes, the homepage of Thrive will still allow you to deliver on all of your learning and development initiatives, whether that's sort of like compliance or personal and professional development opportunities. But you can also see how we can start to embed everyday tools like email, messaging systems, intranets, and so on and so forth. So truly creating this centralized hub for your learners to access all of the information within the organization. An interesting part about that is the fact that we're also going to be introducing federated search across all of those tools that are embedded within Thrive. So I'm going to expand on this in a moment, but we've got our AI assistant called Kiki, which at the moment allows you to search content within Thrive. But what we want to get to and what we're doing with customers is actually not limiting to just Thrive, it's actually connecting all of your organizational technology and allowing your learners to search and explore all of that. As I mentioned, deeper integration. So actually not just linking out to your emails or linking out to other tools that learners have available to them, actually having them within that central tool. So it's not diluting the learning experience or just general employee experience. And with all of that information sort of coming into that central place, we have the benefit of analytics. And again, we're going to talk in a little bit of time about how we can sort of leverage other pieces of data from across the organization to really prove the effectiveness of learning that's happening across the organization. So as I mentioned, we have an AI assistant within our platform, which we've called Kiki. Kiki can be renamed from a customer perspective, so you can rename it to whatever you want. One of my favorites so far is actually Krispy Kreme, so they've renamed it Doughy, I believe. But yeah, customers can rename this, and ultimately, it allows learners to get answers to their questions as quickly and as effectively as possible. With AI for in everyday lives, it's ultimately simplified the experience where learners don't need to sort of rely on searching for keywords. They can just sort of freely ask questions and get answers. And since we've launched Kiki, we've actually gone from learners asking no questions to the platform to actually hundreds of thousands of questions being asked every month from our end users. And we're in a really unique position whereby our customers have access to hundreds and thousands of proprietary documents that are owned by the organization, which public LLMs don't necessarily have access to. So whilst end users can go to ChatGPT or Gemini to ask these questions, they're not getting sort of relevant or specific responses based on their organizational knowledge. So Kiki is at the heart of Thrive, and it's going to be able to, so at the moment, it's able to read all of the information that you're uploading to Thrive. So your PDFs, your articles, your videos, even your SCORM files, and it's providing your learners with immediate responses to their questions. And where we see sort of this playing a vital role is things like providing instant knowledge for customer-facing teams, boosting efficiency for people in maybe operations or in product roles. We can, of course, facilitate further learning in the flow of work. And if we think about some of our actual customer examples, so the likes of Vodafone, if an end user in a store wants to understand maybe some sort of rationale around the pricing changes. We've got Nando's, they call their employees Nandockers. So if a Nandocker wanted to understand how to best create the butterfly burger, as an example, they can search for the ingredients of that. Or maybe Avon, who again, they've got their reps accessing Thrive from a product knowledge perspective, being able to quickly dive into there based on customer responses. So as you can imagine, the lists of use cases are really endless. And I'll just quickly jump you into our learning platform just to bring that to life a little bit. Hopefully you can all see this site now. But ultimately, Kiki is right at the heart of the learning platform. It sits right at the bottom here, easily accessible, which I'm on the desktop at the moment, but we've got a mobile app as well, which is available on iOS and Android. We've got it on mobile and iPad. So again, just making it as easy as possible for learners to be able to ask these questions. So if I come into here and have maybe a general development question, such as, do you have any content to help improve my communication skills? And again, Kiki will look through all of the content, not just on Thrive, but any systems that you've got available and making available to Kiki. But it will also look specifically around content that is available to me as an end user. I think it's really important to make sure that if I work in sales, it's pulling up content that's relevant for the sales team rather than for the customer team, because there might be some sort of slight differences there. So what we can see here is that it's provided us with an immediate response. Hopefully that's sort of given us an answer to the question, but then it's linking us to sort of sources. So where has that actually found that content from? Perhaps I want to go into that in a little bit more detail and actually find the content. Thrive is often also used as not just, again, a learning, but also a communications tool. And a lot of our customers host all of their policies and procedures and documentation within Thrive. So I could, again, quite easily say, what's our annual leave policy? And again, it will find that specific policy, provide me with an immediate response, but then actually say, here's that policy, should you want to go and have a look at that. So gone are the days where learners have to find a document, a PDF, which is 20 pages long, and scroll through it and find the specific information. They can, just like within their personal lives, prompt that within the platform and get the response. They're also then able to further leverage Kiki when you're actually in the document itself. So again, this might be quite a lengthy piece of content. So I could actually just prompt it specifically and say, how many days annual leave do I have? Or a very specific question around a process or a procedure or a product that we're reviewing there. So a really comprehensive tool that's going to allow your learners to get answers to those questions as quickly and as effectively, quicker and effectively than possible.
Thanks, Will. A couple of questions have come in while you've been speaking there around whether this is just an AI agent plugged into your own database. Effectively, it is an AI agent that is plugged into your database, being able to pull from multiple different sources. And then a question from Wendy around will anyone outside of our or a specific organization see this information? I know the answer to that is no, but Will, I'll let you expand on it.
Yeah, great question. So I think in answer to the first question, so yes, the information that is being brought to the learners is purely based on stuff that you've uploaded to Thrive. So if I ask it a question of, if I go onto our internal Thrive platform and say, how could I improve my golf swing? It's a question that I ask myself on a daily basis, and a question that I need the answer to desperately. But unfortunately, Thrive, my internal Thrive, won't be able to answer that question for me, because our internal L&D team haven't, unfortunately, uploaded some content to Thrive about how to improve my golf game. It will outrightly say that, unfortunately, we don't have any content on that. Go and speak to the relevant people to try and find that information. So yeah, you're restricting the information that's being delivered to the learners based on whatever you've uploaded to Thrive, but also what is potentially in other tools that you've connected to that. So maybe like your SharePoint or your Google Drive. And to the second point, yeah, it's extremely important that any information that you're putting onto Thrive and that Kiki's pulling from is sort of restricted to your organization. So yes, absolutely. We're not sort of sharing any of this knowledge across any of our organizations and customers. It's solely for your internal use case, and no one else will be able to access that information.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. I think one of the things that I'm really excited about when we're thinking about that unified front end to Thrive is actually being able to identify certain user behaviors versus the technology that they're using within a business. So understanding who, if I'm a CLO coming into the business and I am then going to go and access maybe my emails first, and then I'm going to go and access my learning, and what that kind of user journey looks like on a daily basis. And you can start to identify patterns eventually from kind of a user behavior perspective, and what does that look like for different roles, and how can you cater therefore to different roles within the future as well. So some good possibilities there as well. So if we move on to the second word which I mentioned, which is actionable, I think we're really focused here on how L&D can empower people to accelerate their careers and also increase talent mobility as well. So I'll let you dig into this a little bit, Will.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so as Helen mentioned, the word actionable is sort of, in our sense, sort of linked to how can we essentially prove the effectiveness of learning within an organization. So we're in a world where now sort of margins are tighter than ever. Any company that wants to invest in learning technology are always having to link to, or try to link to return on investment. So we thought it was extremely important to just sort of freely give access to our customers the data that they need to sort of prove the effectiveness of learning. So within Thrive, we have a number of different out-of-the-box reporting and analytics capabilities, which not just focus on compliance. Compliance is always going to be a figure that we need to review because we're a learning management system, but also helping L&D teams understand what's landing well and what isn't landing well. Who are their learners? What are their preferences? What times are they accessing the platform? So just helping them get a better understanding about who the learners are, what their preferences are, so they can adapt and change their content strategies, learning strategies going forward to make it as effective as possible, essentially. So we have tools that are directly within the platform available to customers. We also are able to actually freely prompt the data as well. So just like we can prompt ChatGPT to ask us to ask questions, or Kiki to ask questions, they're able to just ask data-driven questions. So just show me a list of people who are overdue on content this month, or show me the most popular content items across this particular team. So not actually restricting our customers to data fields and dashboards that we've created, actually giving them the flexibility to sort of freely create those dashboards themselves based on maybe the questions that are being asked by the organization. That's also further supplemented by additional services that we provide, which we call Thrive Impact, which more so than ever now that we've got the integrated solution, allow us to align learning data with other organizational data. So completions and engagement is one thing, but being able to actually link that with maybe sales or customer service scores helps us to start then write those data stories and prove that the things that are happening and the activity that's happening on the learning platform is actually making a real impact across the organization. So if I jump on to just a couple of examples, of live customer examples. So Avon, a very familiar brand, they have over 1 million sort of reps who sell their products. And all of those reps have access to Thrive to upskill themselves on all of their products and processes and procedures. And they partnered with Thrive to launch a mobile first, bite-sized training program that sort of sparks sales growth and builds confidence and create real momentum for sort of self-directed learning. And through the reporting on Thrive and working with our impact team, we were able to not only look at sort of how well things were landing, but also what the tangible outcomes of Thrive were. So you can see that we've got some great sort of initial sort of insights in terms of 100% of learners surveyed were agreed to sort of seeing the platform as being a benefit to their day-to-day roles. They were seeing really great completions in terms of content, so that 92% there. And again, 100% of learners surveyed agreed that they felt more confident utilizing Thrive. So just those 3 points on their own are really great statistics from an L&D perspective. But again, where we really want to do is take that to the next level. So we've got these great initial results, but has that actually impacted anything? And as you can see, the trained reps who are utilizing Thrive outperform their peers in monthly sales by 14%. So that final stat, that tangible outcome of, yes, we've actually boosted sales as a result of implementing effective technology or learning technology within the organization. And that's the point where the Avon teams can go back to the board and say, look, you initially invested X amount within Thrive, but this is what we've done as a result of utilizing that money. This is sort of how we've driven outcomes within the organization. And that's really where we want to get to. Again,
before you move on, Will, sorry, before you move on to talk about Jet2, just wanted to highlight that, as exactly as you said there, that switch from engagement to actually impact on business performance, which is great. And Avon are actually finalists in the Learning Technologies Best Learning Technologies Project Award category at this year's Learning Technologies Awards for this particular project as well. So just wanted to call that out.
Awesome, wonderful, thank you very much. So the second example, and again a similar story to Avon, Jet2 Holidays needed to sort of implement a new sort of learning platform because they were being hampered from their previous tool with no sort of social or collaborative capabilities. So again, that great initial stat of 98% of users are logging into what they call the flight deck at least once a day. And that sort of consistent utilization of the learning text, which has been enabled by them making Thrive part of their day-to-day routines, has then resulted in some of the amazing stats that you can see on the screen there. So sort of physically reducing the amount that it takes to onboard employees, increasing sales conversations, reducing the amount of queries per agent. So some really exciting statistics that we can talk to there. And then the final example is with AA, the driving school. Helen, I know that you've had some really good conversations with the AA. I don't know whether you want to sort of quickly talk about this example here.
Yeah, I can do it. Also, I'm going to mention the Learning Technologies Awards again, because the AA actually won the Bronze Award for best use of data and learning analytics to prove business impact, I think is the catchy title of the full award, at last year's Learning Technologies Awards, again, for this particular project. So one of the challenges the AA driving school was facing was ultimately a national shortage of driving instructors. And what they were finding was during their previous and old training programs, there was quite a high dropout rate that was leading to a lack of conversions of trainees into franchisee owners. So they were able to track year on year positive trends in conversion rates from trainee to franchisee owners. And ultimately, that results in revenue generation for the AA ultimately, but also is combating a national shortage of driving instructors too. So a really great story here that we were able to track with lots of different data points from both within Thrive and then within the broader driving school as well. That we saw a reduction in time for trainees to actually qualify as driving instructors as well. But then also an increase in that conversion rate, like I said. So a hugely impactful project and a worthy award winner too. So yeah, thanks, Will, for letting me talk about that for a little bit.
No worries.
One of the things actually that the AA spoke about in their awards submission was the fact that it wasn't just about that franchisee conversion and the business impact that they were having, but it was really how they were actually impacting people's lives. So it's kind of a timely transfer over to the human focus, the human connection focus that I mentioned 15, 20 minutes ago. Because it's on the individual's lives, I think that the AA were really focused on having that positive impact. So when we're thinking about human connection, how can L&D leverage that social connection to bring people together, to create communities and to share knowledge across the business? A really key point, particularly as we focus so much on technology right now. So Will, again, I'll pass over to you.
Awesome, thank you very much. So yeah, I mean, adding to what Helen mentioned there, and also based on sort of everything that we've mentioned so far with AI, and as we know, AI has been sort of a huge tech revolution to sort of speed up productivity and sort of increase the route to solutions. But as always with sort of tech revolutions, the most important factor in any business change is sort of like the people at the heart of that. So ultimately, you've got access to these new amazing tools, but ultimately the humans and the people are the people who are going to be configuring this and on the other end of utilizing this. So another part of our recent enhancements to Thrive is that we're actually introducing mentoring capabilities into Thrive to just enable your internal employees to be able to connect with the right people at the right time. I think with mentoring in a lot of the cases, mentoring is probably happening within many, if not all, of the customer organizations that we're working with. But a lot of the time, that's probably just ad hoc and sort of generally happens as and when. So again, through a recent acquisition that we've made of a company called Guider, we are deeply integrating their capabilities into Thrive, which will allow you to ultimately be connected with the right people who you need to be connected with. Within Thrive, we have a number of different capabilities, including skills. So we can get a handle on the current capabilities of people and where they're at now and where they want to get to. So as a learner going forward in Thrive, you'll be able to detail yourself as a mentor or a mentee. If you are a mentor, you can put parameters around that in terms of I only want to mentor around these particular topics, and I've only got availability on maybe Fridays at 3 p.m. as an example. So a lot of restrictions in place. It can maybe also be done sort of a mentoring program that is just available within a specific department or use case. So very flexible. But ultimately, what this will allow learners to be able to do is say, I'm really, as an example, I'm Will. I'm really interested in becoming a better public speaker. So I can go through answering a sort of a bunch of questions on Thrive to help get an understanding about where I'm at now and where I need to get to. And then Thrive will automatically suggest 3, 4, or 5 people across the organization who are ready and available and open to having those mentoring conversations to help me sort of improve that particular skill set. So yeah, we're just remembering the fact that we have all of this amazing knowledge and capabilities within our people already. So utilizing this tool as a sort of a facilitation guide to sort of connecting those people. And again, thinking about that connected workforce piece and that connected employee experience, having those sort of like mentoring sessions or that capability deeply embedded within Thrive. So it's not a separate solution, it's embedded right within the experience of Thrive and sits alongside all of the different learning initiatives that we are going through. And then in addition to that, and further supplementing that that use case around helping your learners collaborate with one another and benefit from one another, we're introducing a new piece of functionality which we're calling Spaces. This was actually built for one of our new customers, which is Google. So we're very lucky enough to be rolling Thrive out to anybody that sells Google products all across the world. And one of the key things that Google wanted their teams to be able to do was share and collaborate their sort of top sort of selling tricks and best customer conversations or any conversations that are having and to facilitate these sort of social learning experiences. So again, I'll sort of share my Thrive platform to help bring this to life a little bit more. So this will sit right alongside, again, all of your other learning and initiatives that you're delivering to the platform, and it'll have its own standalone area. And organizations are able to create any spaces that they want to. So they're not restricted by sort of things that we've put out there. They can be private spaces. So perhaps you've got a leadership development program or a management development program over a number of different weeks. So you can create a group for those who are involved to be able to share and collaborate. Or it could just be a general open space that anybody and everybody could stumble upon or be suggested to join and go into there. And once they're in the space, you will be able to sort of deliver organizational information, so top level images and videos and text. But the important part around spaces is actually, again, facilitating those social conversations. So learners will actually be able to upload videos, upload images, upload text, and just sort of share, in this case, their best moments from a customer success story perspective. And you can see that people are posting images and content items that they may have consumed that were beneficial, and people can discuss and collaborate. So in a world of sort of technology and AI, remembering the fact that we do want to still be able to connect with people from across the organization, and sort of benefit from the knowledge that is already available within the teams that we work with. And some just final images here of sort of bringing that to life, really.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Will. I think it is so important to think about that sense of connection, that sense of community, that sense of shared knowledge, and how you do that, yes, alongside people in a mentoring capacity, but actually in that space with a collective cohort. I know that's going to be quite significant for people around, yes, certain products and certain topics, but around certain development programs like leadership and management training, for example. So ultimately, we are in that AI era, and now it is the time that workplace tools caught up, essentially. I know that we've had quite a lot of questions. Will, I think the last slide on this was about, has anyone got any questions for us? Oh no, yeah, we had one more. We did have one more. That's right. Our advice is, our ending piece of advice before we do move on to questions is, how can you think about the art of the possible with your current suppliers that you're using? So we recommend, as I said, the human connection element is not only from how do you encourage that within your own organizations, but for us as a business, we're based on having the right conversations with other people and with our customers. So our advice is always sit down with your tech suppliers, have a conversation about the art of the possible, and see what their solutions can offer to you. And likewise, do the same with us as well. So before we wrap up this session, I know we've got just under 15 minutes left. We have had loads of different questions. Actually, I know Andrew's going to come back on and talk about a few of these, but there were a couple of themes that were coming out, in particularly in relation to Kiki, which were around the security and protection of data within an organization. So just to reiterate that the information that Kiki draws from is ring fenced to your own organization, and no one external will be able to access that or see the information. But it's also, to someone else's point, ring fenced via audience. So Will, you might do a better job of explaining this than I will, but we have particular audiences that you can set up on Thrive. So it can be maybe team specific, it could maybe be project specific. And depending on which audiences you're in, when you're searching for particular information, it will only deliver back the information that you will have access to. But Will, you might want to expand on that slightly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You summarised that perfectly, Helen. So, yeah, within Thrive, we can group people into audiences based on whatever we want to, essentially, whether it's job role, location, or how long you've been at the organisation. And if I'm sharing a content item with the customer success team, as an example, which might have like private customer data on it, if they were to ask a question of Kiki about that, it would surface for them. But if someone outside of the customer success team were to prompt Kiki a similar question, it wouldn't bring that information up because that data hasn't been shared with them. So yeah, you can rest assured that the information that you're delivering out to your learners is sort of people aren't seeing the things that you don't want them to see.
That's a really interesting point. I think that there's a question from May, which I think is really interesting, which is about managers and senior managers actually looking at access to the employees using it. Can a manager see what questions, like in Nando's, for example, a staff member is asking? Are you finding that you're getting trend analysis stuff out of that? Because that should be really powerful. If everyone's asking the same question, then that's got to suggest something's going on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great point. And already in our platform, we have analytics around the historical search within Thrive. So we can actually see what are people sort of searching for in terms of like keywords. And importantly, let's say, for example, everybody's searching for a particular product item. Do we then have content that helps answer those questions? So at the moment, in full transparency, we don't have search analytics within Kiki, but that's a natural progression of that analytics that's already embedded within the solution, and absolutely important information for L&D teams to understand, because again, not only do they need to make sure that there's relevant content in there, they need to sort of understand these types of questions that their learners are asking so they can make an even more effective solution going forward.
Yeah, it's an important point because this is ongoing conversation I'm having with people is that, if someone only watches 2 minutes of a video, is it because the first 2 minutes is really good, or is it the first 2 minutes is really bad? And it's knowing where if 1,000 people have done that, well then is it because it's that good, and the responses they're getting back from it, which I think is really important. A question from Sarangi, which is similar, which is, are there guardrails for which folders in SharePoint has access for the federated search? Similar to ring fencing, you can restrict what it can search. It's not just going to go meandering through and finding stuff elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's exactly the same content. If we're sort of hiding and sort of ring fencing content for certain people and groups, then yeah, absolutely, that'll be the same for SharePoint and Google Drive as well.
Yeah. As a question, so you've answered Ben's question. Ben asked a question about, does Kiki understand specific user and what content would or wouldn't be visible to them? And Julia followed that up, which I think is a really one. And how does it do that? Is it necessary to tag learners' names and roles, or does it pull it from the HR database? Because one of the problems I've always had with LMSs is that they sit external to the HR information system, the HRIS, and so you're constantly having to update both. How does that handshake work, and is it nice and clean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm plucking this stat out of thin air, so this is a full caveat, but I would say over 95% of our customers have a integration with the HR system. It's very irregular if a customer doesn't
Yeah,
have that HR system integrated, and for all of the reasons that you just mentioned there. So yeah, we have a feed of user data constantly going into Thrive, so people can seamlessly log in. But importantly, that allows us to understand who those individual learners are in terms of their organizational hierarchy, what they are in terms of sort of teams and job roles and things like that. And then when it comes to sharing content on the system, again, when we're sharing a content item, we can actually say this only goes out to this job role, and only that job role can see that. And then that sort of has sort of a knock-on effect of being able to search and find and explore any of that
yeah.
content. So yeah, you're right. Ultimately, it's all driven by that HR integration piece.
Excellent. A question from Ben, another one. Can users create their own spaces?
Good question, Benson. No, not currently. So Spaces has just been released, and initially we wanted to have some sort of management over that. I think we were conscious of Spaces becoming overpopulated. So initially, our idea is that certain administrators are able to create spaces. Again, they can be private, so only groups can create those and access those. Or they can just be available for people to stumble upon and find. So, no, the first release is that we're sort of restricting that for administrators, but who knows? We might progress into users being able to create those spaces at a later date.
Fabulous. Great question from Andrea, which I think is a really interesting one, which is one of it's a common one that I think happens, is that what happens if the AI can't answer a problem? Will it know at what point to revert to a human user? Because there's always this risk that people will go down a rabbit hole and the AI constantly trying to, come up with an answer rather than referring somebody. What safeguards are built in to recognize, okay, so this is something we can't do. We're going to have to give it to a person.
Yeah, great question. And absolutely. So we throughout Thrive we use two different main LLMs. So we use Google's Gemini and we use OpenAI as well. And they do different things on Thrive. So if we're asking it to create an image, it will use Google. If we're asking it to sort of generate text, it will use OpenAI as an example. But if learners are asking questions and it's sort of bringing us a response, it's not going to, if we've not got information on Thrive, it's not just going to go to OpenAI and find some information and pull that in. That's the point where it will say, we don't actually have any information on Thrive about what you just asked. And then it will point them in the direction of the person or the team who they should potentially reach out to. So again, if I ask it for the golf example again, if I ask it to how to improve my golf swing, it's not gonna help me with that, unfortunately.
But I think that's also where effective, I think someone else asked about effective document control. That's where that comes
Yeah,
in handy as well. That's obviously a responsibility of the organization to make sure that, what they have on the platform is accurate and up to date as well, because you don't want something terrible to be fed into an answer. So you have to kind of ensure there is um, that element of control and administration and cleansing from your perspective as an administrator as well.
a really interesting question or comment from Olga. A lot of social learning happens naturally, daily work related interactions on Slack, MS Teams, etc. Um, I She's asking, could you consider integrating 5 spaces within that flow of learning? I'm assuming that would be an organizational decision, how far they would allow the connection to be. I don't know. Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we have out-of-the-box integrations with Slack and Microsoft Teams, whereby we can share content into those channels. And we're sort of further integrating that with that new homepage experience. So rather than Slack being sitting outside of Thrive, so sharing a piece of content having to go there, Slack will actually be embedded in that homepage experience. So a space will just be like a content item within Thrive. So you can share a content item into a Slack channel, and you'll also be able to do that within a space as well. So if I at Helen within a Slack, within a space, sorry, it will notify her within the things that she's turned notifications on, which could quite easily be Slack. So yeah, making it just as easy and if not easier to sort of respond to those and have visibility of all of those.
Fabulous. And question from Tina: based on the access to information, if all staff are allowed to access everything, can Kiki put the most relevant information for a particular team at the top? So the interesting question there around how does it know, which works more or whatever. How can that do that? Can Kiki do this?
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways in which we can personalize the experience, and this doesn't just sit across Kiki, it's everything. So like the homepage experience, or even like just the general keyword search. So it will look at those things that we've pulled across from the HR system. So what is my job role? Is this content item more relevant for this particular job role or this particular location? But it will also look at the activity. So if I've got a team of 5 people and all 5 of those people have accessed that content item, but I haven't yet, then it's more likely to be suggested or recommended to me. And that's, again, whether that's just like on a homepage block that's recommending content through the general search or even through Kiki. So yeah, that's the sort of same constant throughout all those pieces.
Yeah. Perhaps there could be a request to space option, says Ben. Sometimes users have better ideas than us.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
no, it's a great point. We actually do that with our skills capabilities already. So with our skills, we can sort of say right, there's this particular job role, so automatically add these skills to their profile because we know that they're skills that a sales team need to do, as an example. But the example that I always use is that I work in sales, so I might add to my profile selfie videoing because I work in sales and I often record myself delivering selfies to sort of prospect to people. But the organization might not necessarily think that selfie videoing is a good skill to have.
Yeah.
So giving the learners the ability to say, well, these are actually skills that I'm on the sort of ground day to day. So these are skills that I'm using. So why not? Why can't I sort of learn more about that? You might have the odd few people adding like knitting and stuff like that to their profile, which you never know could be useful. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's where we take spaces as well. But yeah, great point.
Fabulous. And last question is a question from Jane, and it's not a difficult question, but I think it's an interesting one. What are the limitations of the system? What can't it help with? Which is almost sort of like what would you like it to do that it's not doing? Which I think is a maybe a way to approach it.
Yeah, great question. So one thing that Thrive doesn't currently do, I'll sort of say that it is something that we are going to be working on, which is kind of a bit of a cheat to the question. But at the moment, Thrive doesn't sort of have those full performance management and sort of 360 conversations. Yep. So at the moment, we have elements of that process. So managers can create custom learning goals for their learners to help improve skill sets. Of course, we've got that skill capabilities whereby you can see where learners are at now and where they're going to get to, but we don't have that sort of full performance management capabilities. So that is an area that we lack at the moment, but I'm very pleased to say that that is something that is actively on our roadmap in 2026. So it will sort of come full circle to those development conversations. And again, bringing in that human piece. We've got all this great piece of technology, but sometimes it's those management conversations that are going to help us progress. So that's exactly what we're going to be bringing into the solution to sort of help facilitate those conversations.
My answer was also going to be exactly the same as Will's.
Was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like we set ourselves up for that question. But I think it is that just fully kind of connected 360 employee experience and being able to keep that all within Thrive is obviously the ideal scenario. And I'm conscious of time, so I'll stop there.
Awesome. Thank you both. Again, thank you to everybody for your chat and the questions and comments. And I absolutely, I love these sessions just because we get such a diverse group of audience and we just get really interesting sessions. There was a comment about some saying, oh, this is about Thrive's product. What it does though, is it raises people's thinking about how they can use their own products. And your question at the end, I thought was absolutely spot on, Helen, which is go and speak to your vendors. So if you're not using Thrive, go and speak to your vendors about how they're doing this stuff as well. And that's the point of it. What it does, if we can improve it as a profession, and even if you're not a Thrive customer, I know you guys would like them to be, but what it does do is it just raises the conversation to think about some of these things.
Exactly.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Helen. Really appreciate your time. And thank you to everybody for joining in. Thanks for the session. We are closing down and are going to have lunch. I'm going to have something to eat because I've been here all morning. And it's time to prepare for the next session. And at 1:30, we've got Microsoft and AIQ looking at enhancing skills at scale, which again is a case study actually looking at how AIQ and Microsoft work with GP strategies to look at strategic application. So thank you, everybody. And I hope we'll see you again in a little while. Take care now.
Thank you all.